Welcome to today's message from Gadsden Christian Fellowship. Our hope and prayer is that you will be encouraged, inspired, and challenged to take your next step in your relationship with God. Now, here's today's message.
I want to give you this testimony. This is not a conversion testimony. Please understand, there are some people whom I have met who have radical saved testimonies where they were here and now they're here, and it's a fantastic story, and I love those stories. But my conversion experience was nothing like that, actually. My grandfather was a career pastor. My father was ordained to be a pastor, although he chose to do something different for a living. But either way, I grew up in a decisively Christian household. So when I walked the aisle in my grandfather's church to make my first public profession of faith, it was rather expected and uneventful. I will tell you that my grandmother that morning took my 7-year-old face in her hands and she said, "Look at me. Jesus is real and he loves you." So in her honor this morning, I've entitled the message, "Jesus Loves Me." Some of you may think that's a bit rudimentary, but hopefully at the end of the testimony, I think you'll understand why. Over my 5 decades of church attendance, I've noticed a pattern, a formula that most pastors seem to adhere to when they bring the messages week in and week out. That is, they choose a handful of scriptures, they string them together thematically, usually based on either context or allegory. Some pastors will introduce hermeneutics depending on the sophistication of their audience. Then they start to wrap it up with a personal anecdote, an altar call, and see you next week. But what I find conspicuously missing are the testimonies, the real-world application of God's word from God's people. How many of you know past Proverbs 3, verse 27? Do everything you possibly can to everyone in need. Raise your hand if you know that one. How about Proverbs 3, verse 5? Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. That one's popular. You know that one? Here's a real popular one. Raise your hand. Romans 8:28. We know that in all things work together for good for those who love God and who have been called according to his purpose. You know that one? Let me ask you, for those of you who know those scriptures, how many of you actually believe those scriptures? And for those of you who believe them, how many of you would hang everything on those scriptures? God bless you. God bless you. Most people, at least many people, find that much easier said than done. I was a sales rep in Dallas for a long time. Real long time. And while I was there, I went from company to company doing the same basic thing. There are 2 versions of sales reps. There are the inside people who are stuck in a cubicle wearing a headset all day long. And then there are the outside people who are stuck in their cars and visit with as many face-to-face clients as they can all day long. That was me. I was an outside guy. And on my first day with this company, my boss reminded me that what I had was 30-day employment. I had a sales figure. I had a goal that I had to reach. And at the end of the month, if I had hit that figure, then I had earned the privilege of working another 30 days. But if the last Friday of the month came and I was under that figure, there was no need to return to work on Monday, that I would receive my paperwork of termination in the mail. That's brutal. That's brutal, but that's Dallas. This particular company sold office equipment. computers, faxes, printers, mail machines, telephone systems, that sort of thing. In August of that year, I was $20,000 late. I had 1 week to go, and I was $20,000 behind. Now, if you are selling commercial real estate and the average ticket is in the tens of millions, then $20,000 isn't much. But if you're selling office equipment, $20,000 is a bloodbath. You understand that? The good news is that I had a protected territory, which meant that only I could sell in certain zip codes. If anybody else tried to sell in my zip code, I would get the credit for it. The bad news is that everybody else also had a protected territory, and I couldn't go outside my lines. And my lines were terrible. I remember this particular August, I had done my homework. I knew all of the companies who were in my zip codes. I knew what equipment they had. I knew who was eligible for an upgrade. And I knew who had the financial propensity to be able to make a sale like that. And unfortunately, there was only one company that even had a glimmer of opportunity for that. So here it was Monday morning, the last Monday of the month, and I called and tried to make an appointment. The lady who answered said, "We do not deal with solicitors." I said, "Not to worry, I don't smoke." I thought it was funny. She didn't think it was funny. And she hung up on me. No kidding. The next day was Tuesday. I have 4 days left. And I called again and I said, "Ma'am, I think we got off on the wrong foot yesterday. I do have a solution that I would like to come by and explain, and I think that this will truly benefit your company. May I please have an appointment?" And this time, she spewed a litany of vitriol that I cannot I cannot repeat that here. If I did, Pastor Johnny would never invite me back. The next day was Wednesday, and my boss called me into his office. And he said, "I like you. I really do. So please don't take this personally, but a sale the size of what you need takes months to put together. And you literally have only a matter of hours. What is it that gives you any semblance of hope that you can pull this through?" And I said, "Tom, Jesus is real and he loves me." The next day was Thursday. I got to the office early, probably an hour early. I was the only one there. I paced the floor. I prayed a lot. And then I sat down at my desk and I opened up my day runner. And for those of you who are half my age, a day runner is a leather-bound zippered notebook that contained a paper calendar. And yes, back in the day, we used paper calendars. And right before that, we had a sundial. But right there on top was my yellow sticky note with the company name, address, phone number. It was about 7:30, and I called again. I was expecting the same response that I had gotten, but this time a man answered. And I'm trying to figure this out real quick, and I assume that the lady probably came in 8 to 5, and seeing how it was 7:30, it was probably the owner of the company. Not Mrs. Nasty, as I had fondly called her. I don't remember her name, but just because of her voice and the things that she had to say, I nicknamed her Mrs. Nasty. But I was probably talking at this moment to Mr. Big. So I had to think fast and talk fast. And I said, "Sir, we have an office solution that will greatly upgrade your technology and pay for itself within 5 years. Please let me come talk to you." And a good 10 seconds went by without him saying a single word. And 10 seconds may not sound like a long time, but if you're on the phone and you're expecting an answer, 10 seconds is a long time. He said, "If you can be here tomorrow at 2 o'clock, I'll give you 2 minutes. But if you are so much as a full second late, don't even bother. So the next day, Friday, at 1:15, I was on my way. And I was rehearsing my proposal. I was praying hard. I was looking forward to making this presentation. I just knew that I could do it. And I crested a long hill with a car pulled over on the shoulder at the bottom of the hill on the right. And I heard a voice. Not an audible voice, but the closest thing to it. And God said, "You need to pull over and help this man." And I said, "No, not now, God, please. I'm wearing a suit, and it's August. August in Texas is hot, let me tell you. I'm busy, Lord. I have an appointment, and a big one." And then to the forefront of my mind came Proverbs 3:27. Do everything you possibly can for those who need help. And then I heard this voice again. I'm only 300 yards away. And God said, "You need to pull over and help this man." I'm desperate at this point. And I said, "God, I'll make you a deal. If he's still there when I come back this way, I will pull over, I will fix his car, I'll give it a bath, I'll vacuum it out, I'll change the oil. God, please, not this time, not now." And then Proverbs 3, verse 5 came to mind. Trust the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. And for the very last time that day, I heard God's voice. And he said, "You'll either obey me or you won't." Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. I was 50 yards out. I slowed down. I put on my right blinker. I could hear my tires crunch in the gravel as I pulled up behind this car with a flat tire. And I got out, and I said, "Excuse me." And this old curmudgeon turns around and looks at me, and he said, "I don't need your help. Go on. Once a Marine, always a Marine. I can do this myself." But he couldn't. He couldn't. The problem was he couldn't get the lug nuts off. He had a tire iron, a lug nut wrench, that was about that long. How many of you know that they put those things on with an air hammer? Just, they put those things on way too tight, in my opinion. But fortunately, I had an extension that slipped right over the end of that and gave me another 18 inches, but exponentially more leverage. You understand that? And even then, I stood on the end of this thing with my 200 pounds and even bounced up and down, and finally I broke the first one loose, and then the second one, and then the one after that. Meanwhile, he was pacing behind me, mad. And I looked back while I was working, and I said, "Sir, your tire going flat today was no accident. And of all the people passing up and down this highway, me in particular stopping to help you was also no accident. This is a divine appointment. I was sent here by God." I know how that sounds. You know how that sounds. He knew how that sounded. And he looked at me and he said, "Really? Are you some kind of a kook?" I ignored that part and I said, "Sir, you're angry. You're bitter. Something terrible happened in your life a long time ago. You blamed God then, you're blaming God now, and you've been running from him ever since." And he said, "How did you know that?" Well, I didn't, but God did. And then he proceeds to tell me this poignant story about his young wife. He described her as affectionate and attentive and energetic and playful and beautiful and lovely in every way. She was also a church-going, Bible-reading prayer warrior, but she died anyway. And I said, "Sir, I'm terribly sorry for your loss. But that wasn't God's fault. We live in a fallen world, and bad things happen to good people. And if she really was the things that you just described, I don't feel sorry for her. She is basking in glory, never better. I don't feel sorry for her. I do, however, feel sorry for you. The bigger loss are the years that you spent languishing, wallowing in misery, needlessly. And sir, I also feel compelled to tell you something. This is your last chance to receive Christ in your heart. You've been rejecting him year after year after year, but today, your day was interrupted. My day was interrupted. And if you reject Christ one more time, he will never again prick your heart. He will never again quicken your spirit. And you will leave this world without him. His face softened. He hung his head, and I think he teared up a little bit. And right there on the side of the road in Texas, in August, with giant trucks rumbling by and spraying us with grit, I led him in the sinner's prayer. He accepted Christ that day and became a changed man, eternally, forever. We shook hands, and he disappeared off into traffic. I got back into my truck. I turned on the air. I looked in the rearview mirror, and I was covered in dirt and sweat, grease. I was filthy. And then I looked at the clock. It was way after 2. And I cried. I cried hard for several minutes. But not because I blew the appointment. Not because I just lost my job and I knew it. I cried because how close I came to callously driving past this man and going about my business. I cried because the miracle that just happened almost didn't. What changed in this man was of eternal consequence, forever. Infinitely more important than anything I had going on that day. And I repented hard. And I said, God, I am so sorry. I heard your voice. I knew it was you. I understood what you said. And I almost disobeyed anyway. And God, I am so broken, and I apologized over and over and over. When I finally pulled myself together, I had the thought that I had 2 options. One, I might as well go home, right? The other is I might as well go to this man's office anyway. What did I have to lose? Yes, I was very late, but if I didn't go, then it's all over for sure. So I took the next exit. I stopped into a fast food restaurant. I stepped in the bathroom to clean myself up as best I could. Then I went to this man's office complex. I pushed open the glass doors, and there sat Mrs. Nasty. This is hilarious. I had a mental picture of this lady based on her voice, based on the words that she used, based on the nickname that I had given her, and she was hilariously similar to what I had pictured. something between a character from Monsters Incorporated and Howard Stern. And I told her who I was, and she said, I know who you are, and you're late. Just turn around and go. And I said, ma'am, yes, I'm late, but I had an emergency. It was unexpected. I'm sorry, but I'm here now. May I please go back and speak to him? And then she said, well, you got lucky because he just got back a few minutes ago himself. He was also running late. So I guess you can go on back there. So I straightened my lapel one more time, put on a smile. I walked down the hall and turned left. And guess who was sitting behind the desk? The same man whose tire I had just changed. He looked at me and he said, you were my 2 o'clock appointment? In more ways than one, brother. I was your 2 o'clock appointment. And we laughed for 10 minutes. And he said, do you have something for me to sign? I said, sure do. Press hard, there's 3 copies. He didn't even look at the contract. About 4:30 that afternoon, I was back in my office. I went to my boss, and I put the paper in his hand. And he looked at it, dumbfounded, and he said, how is this possible? And I said, because Jesus is real, and he loves me. Now think about that. If I had passed this man, I would have sat in his office alone for an hour. If he even came at all, he would have been in no mood to talk to me. I would have lost my sail. He would have lost his soul. And not one, but 2 beautiful miracles wouldn't have happened. Before Pastor Johnny comes up, I want to leave you with one more thought. Romans 8:28. All things work together for good for those who love him and are called according to his purpose. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's message from Gadsden Christian Fellowship. For more information about our church and our ministries, you can visit our website at gcfellowship.tv, as well as follow us on social media under Gadsden Christian Fellowship. Have a blessed day.